The man and the dog no one wanted. Wind blew soft through the alley behind the shelter. As KeanuReeves leaned against his motorcycle, eyes focused on the metal gate in front of him. It was a cold, gray afternoon, the kind that made even the city feel quiet. His helmet rested on the seat, and in his hands, he held a simple, worn dog leash. Today wasn't about fame. It wasn't about movies or fans or cameras. Today was personal. Keanu had been coming to this shelter for weeks. He never told anyone. He didn't want attention. He just liked being around animals, especially the ones no one else wanted. A volunteer named Rachel stepped outside, holding a clipboard. "You're back," she said with a small smile. Keanu nodded. "Is he still here?" Rachel hesitated. "Yeah, he hasn't moved much, doesn't trust people." Keanu took a breath. "That makes two of us." They walked inside together. The shelter smelled of old blankets and damp concrete. Soft barks echoed through the narrow hallway. Cages lined both sides, filled with dogs, big, small, loud, quiet. At the very end of the hall, in a shadowed corner, was a cage that looked older than the rest. Inside lay a large German shepherd, curled tight, eyes barely open. His name was Max. Keanu knelt down slowly. "Hey, buddy." The dog didn't move. Rachel whispered. "He's a retired K9, served 8 years, lost his partner in the line of duty. After that, he stopped eating, stopped trusting. No one wants him because he won't even look at people." Keanu reached out, palm open. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "it takes someone broken to understand." Another. After 10 long minutes, Max finally lifted his head. His eyes met Keanu's, and something unspoken passed between them. The next morning, Keanu walked through his quiet neighborhood with Max at his side. The leash was loose, but the dog didn't run. He stayed close, alert, watching everything. It had taken hours of silence, gentle movement, and patience, but Max had followed him home. Now, they walked like two shadows under the trees. Neighbors peeked out from windows, surprised. Keanu was known for being kind but private. Seeing him with a dog, especially one so serious, was new. A boy on a bike slowed beside them. "What's his name?" he asked. "Max," Keanu replied. "He looks like a superhero dog." Keanu smiled. "He was, maybe still is." The boy rode off, and Max glanced up at Keanu, almost like he understood. They kept walking. Later that evening, Keanu sat on his porch, a book in one hand, tea in the other. Max lay at his feet, head resting on his paws. The air smelled of wood and rain. But something felt off. Across the street, a black car had been parked for over an hour. Windows tinted, engine off. Keanu noticed it, but didn't react. Max lifted his head slightly, ears twitching. Someone was watching. Keanu didn't know yet. But what had started as a quiet act of kindness was about to pull him into something dark. Because the people in that car weren't fans. They weren't friends, and they had no idea who Max really was. Just 2 nights later, it happened. Keanu had taken Max to the small grocery store on 9th Street. It was late, only a few customers inside. He tied Max to the post outside, not because he didn't trust the dog, but because store policy didn't allow pets. Max didn't move. He just sat quietly, eyes scanning. Keanu went in, grabbed a few items, and headed to the counter. When he stepped outside, he saw 2 men standing near Max. They were dressed in dark clothes, wearing hoodies. One of them held something behind his back. Keanu's voice was calm. "Something I can help you with." The taller man turned slowly. "You're Keanu, right?" Keanu nodded once. "Must be nice. The money, the peace, the attention." Keanu didn't answer. The other man stepped forward. "You always walk around alone." Keanu's body tensed. "Not from fear, from experience. You might want to step back from my dog," he said softly. The taller man smirked. "What's he gonna do, bark?" Then he stepped forward. And everything changed in 1 second. Max lunged. The leash snapped. The man screamed as Max tackled him to the ground, teeth locked on his sleeve. Not skin, controlled, trained. Keanu moved fast, stepping between the second man and Max. "Don't," he said. The man pulled out a knife, and Max growled, low and deep. But before anything else could happen, flashing lights filled the street. Someone had called the cops. The men tried to run, but they didn't get far. Max stood tall, breathing heavy, chest rising and falling like a soldier who had never forgotten how to protect. After the police took the men away, Keanu knelt beside Max. "You remember, don't you?" he whispered. Max licked his hand once. Rachel was right. He wasn't just a dog. He was a guardian. And now they had each other. But Keanu didn't know. The attack wasn't random. Those men were sent, and more danger was coming, not just for him, but for the dog who had already lost everything once, * the collar, and the Earth. Next morning, sunlight poured across Keanu's wooden floors, but the house didn't feel peaceful. Max paced back and forth near the window, every muscle alert, his eyes never leaving the street outside. He didn't bark. He didn't whine. He just watched, like he was waiting for something to return. Keanu sat at the kitchen table, slowly sipping coffee. The newspaper lay open, but his eyes weren't really reading. His thoughts kept going back to last night. The attackers, the knife, the black car. He had dealt with crazy fans before, people who crossed boundaries. But this felt different. This felt planned. He reached down and gently scratched behind Max's ear. "You saved me," he whispered. Max looked up, quiet and calm. His presence was strong, steady. Keanu leaned down and examined the collar the shelter had given him. It was old, worn, but something felt strange. There was a second layer, stitched in thick fabric. He gently tugged at the corner, and it peeled back. Inside was a small tag hidden. Keanu held it up to the light. It read, "Unit 74K9, officer down, reassigned to silent hold." His eyes narrowed. He had heard of silent hold before. It was a secret program used by certain police departments to retire dogs who had been involved in high-risk operations, especially after their handlers were killed or targeted. Some of those dogs were trained in more than just tracking or protection. Some were trained in special ops. Keanu suddenly realized something he hadn't thought about before. Max wasn't just a former police dog. He had been reassigned to be hidden. Someone had wanted him out of sight. But why? Keanu grabbed his phone and dialed the number Rachel had given him for emergencies. She picked up after 2 rings. "Hello, it's Keanu." "Hey, everything okay?" "Not really," he said. "I found something in Max's collar." He explained it all. The tag, the hidden stitching, the attackers. Rachel was silent for a moment. Then she said, "You need to come to the shelter. Now." An hour later, Keanu arrived at the back of the shelter. Rachel was waiting in the staff-only area, a file in her hand. Max walked beside Keanu, calm as ever. Rachel looked shaken. "I wasn't supposed to show this, but after what you just told me," she opened the file. Inside were 2 photos, one of Max in uniform beside a smiling man, his former handler. The second was of the same man, but this time it was a crime scene. His name was Officer Jared Wells, Rachel said quietly. He was killed during a sting operation 2 years ago. The dog Max refused to leave his body for hours. They said it was heartbreaking. Keanu looked at the photo again. Max stared at it. Rachel continued. After the funeral, the department decided it was too dangerous for Max to continue working. There were rumors the gang responsible for Jared's death might come after the dog. They said he could identify them, so they sent him to Silent Hold, a shelter that erases all records. "I never knew we were one of those drop points." Keanu sat back, his mind racing. "You think those guys from last night were connected?" Rachel nodded slowly. "If they were sent, it means someone found out Max is still alive, and they don't want that." Keanu looked down at Max. The dog's eyes were focused, strong, but there was something sad behind them, like he remembered every sound, every moment. Keanu stood up. "Then we're not running, not hiding." Rachel looked surprised. "What are you going to do?" Keanu answered simply. "I'm going to protect him, like he protected me." They drove back in silence. But when Keanu and Max arrived at the house, the front door was open, just a crack. Keanu's single quotes as heart stopped for a second. He reached slowly under his jacket and pulled out the emergency tool he kept there. a heavy flashlight with a steel end. His other hand gently unhooked Max's leash. "Stay close," he whispered. Max moved like a shadow. They stepped inside. The air felt still, but not empty. Keanu could feel it. Someone had been there. His living room was untouched. His bedroom looked fine. But then he saw it. On the kitchen counter, a single item, a bullet, and next to it, a note. "You've been warned. Give us the dog, or next time we don't knock." Double quotes, Max growled softly. Keanu looked around. Every instinct told him it wasn't safe to stay here anymore. He picked up the note and folded it. "They want you, buddy," he said to Max, "but they'll have to come through me first." And so, that night, Keanu Reeves disappeared. With nothing but a backpack, his bike, and the dog who had once been left behind. Because this wasn't just about safety anymore. It was about finishing what Max had started. And the people responsible, they had no idea what was coming. The ghost trail road stretched long and empty as Keanu Reeves rode through the desert highway. His eyes fixed on the horizon, the wind whipping past him. Max sat calmly in the sidecar, wearing protective goggles, his ears twitching with every sound. They had left Los Angeles hours ago. No goodbye, no attention, just gone. Keanu knew staying would have been a risk, not just to himself, but to anyone around him. The gang that had come for Max, they weren't amateurs. They had found Keanu's house. They had watched him, left a bullet on his kitchen counter. They weren't bluffing. But what they didn't understand was this. Keanu wasn't running because he was scared. He was hunting. And Max was ready. They arrived at a remote cabin just before dusk. It sat at the edge of a quiet forest in a small town few people remembered. Keanu had bought it years ago under a different name. A place for peace. No cell signal, no neighbors, no cameras, just silence and trees. The moment they stepped inside, Max circled the space, checking corners, sniffing every wall. He was trained, his instincts sharper than most humans. Keanu unpacked a small satellite phone, a few cans of food, and an old notebook filled with names and dates. "We're going to figure this out," he whispered to Max. But before they could rest, a sound echoed through the woods. Not loud, not close, but enough. Max single quotes. S ears perked up. Keanu reached for the flashlight again and stepped out onto the porch. Wind moved through the trees. Nothing else. But Max didn't relax. He stood at the edge of the steps, body still, head tilted. Then he barked once, short, sharp. He had caught something. Keanu followed his gaze and spotted it. A small drone, hovering just at the tree line. He grabbed a rock from the garden bed and flung it fast. The drone dropped, crashing into the leaves. Max ran and retrieved the broken device with his teeth. "They found us already," Keanu muttered. Inside the drone was a flashing chip. It wasn't just recording video. It was sending a signal. Keanu worked all night. He broke open the drone's chip and connected it to an old tablet. Most of it was encrypted, but one file stood out. A contact list. A few names, some crossed out. One of them circled in red. Santoro Prescott, Arizona. Keanu single quotes. S eyes narrowed. He remembered that name. Santoro was a known associate of the cartel that had tried to kill Officer Jared, Max's former handler. Rumors said he had gone quiet years ago after the bust fell apart, disappeared into the desert. But now his name had come back. Keanu circled it with his pen. "We're going to Prescott," he said. Max wagged his tail once, slow and steady. He understood. The next day, they rode into Prescott under a cloudy sky. The town was dry, old, and quiet. One main road, a diner, a gas station, and an old garage with a hand-painted sign, Santoro's Auto Works. Keanu parked down the street and walked in with Max at his side. A heavy man in a dusty cap looked up from under the hood of a car. "Need a fix?" he asked. Keanu shook his head. "No, looking for someone. Not here," the man grunted. Keanu took a step closer. "Name's Santoro." The man froze, then reached slowly for something behind the bench. But before he could grab it, Max growled. Low, deep, full of warning. Keanu lifted his hand calmly. "We're not here to fight. I just want to talk about Jared Wells." Santoro stiffened. "That cop?" Keanu nodded. And the dog he left behind. Santoro's eyes dropped to Max. Then something changed in his face. Not fear. Remorse. He stepped back and sat on an oil drum. You got no idea what you're walking into, he muttered. Then help me understand, Keanu said. Santoro looked down. Jared was good. Too good. He got too close to something he shouldn't have. A shipment. Special cargo. Not drugs. Not weapons. People. Keanu stayed quiet. We were all part of it once, Santoro admitted. But Jared found a girl, a kid, locked in a shipping container. He got her out, and they killed him for it. Keanu whispered, and Max saw it. Santoro nodded. The dog tore into the guy who shot him. Almost killed him. But he got away. Went into hiding. Calls himself Ghost now. Keanu clenched his fists. Is he the one sending people? He's afraid of that dog, Santoro said. He knows Max could recognize him, even now, even years later. Keanu looked down at Max. His eyes were calm, but they burned with memory. Do you know where this ghost is? Keanu asked. Santoro sighed. You're not going to like the answer. By nightfall, Keanu and Max were on the road again. They were headed toward an abandoned airfield in Nevada. A place Santoro said Ghost had used to run private shipments, unofficial, untracked, perfect for people who wanted to stay hidden. It was dangerous. But Keanu wasn't afraid. And Max, he wasn't just remembering anymore. He was ready to finish what he and Jared had started. And if Ghost thought the past was buried, he was about to find out that loyalty never dies. The airfield of Silenceeth. Night wind howled across the Nevada plains as KeanuReeves parked the motorcycle behind a rusted shipping container. Engine cut, lights off. He crouched beside Max, who sat completely still in the dust, eyes locked on the distance. There, in the moonlight, stood the abandoned airfield. Half of the old hangars had caved in. A broken control tower leaned sideways like a tired soldier. It was the kind of place people forgot about. No cameras, no law, just wind, silence, and shadows. But Max didn't forget. His body was tense, his breathing sharp, his nose flared slightly as he caught something in the air. Something familiar. Keanu whispered. You recognize this place, don't you? Max gave the smallest growl. Yes. This is where it happened. They waited until midnight. Keanu used his old contacts to track a private signal connected to Ghost, a scrambled code bouncing from nearby towers. Every time the signal blinked, Max growled softly, confirming its presence. Then the sound came. A low hum in the distance. A black SUV rolled through the gate, tires crunching the gravel. Keanu and Max crouched low behind a pile of junked tires. Inside the SUV were 3 men, one in the passenger seat with a rifle, another driving, and the third in the back. Keanu narrowed his eyes. The one in the back had a long scar across his cheek. Max's ears shot up. He recognized him. Keanu leaned in. That's him, isn't it? Ghost. Max growled again, louder now. Ghost stepped out of the car and lit a cigarette. He looked around like a man who owned the night. Relaxed, careless, untouchable. But that feeling was about to end. Keanu looked at Max. We do this quiet, clean, in and out. Max stared at him for a second. Then, without a sound, he moved. Keanu circled wide, disappearing into the darkness. Max stayed low, using the shadows like a soldier. Every step was calculated, silent, precise. They moved like they had done this 100 times before. Ghost's men had no idea. One guard walked to the side of the hangar, yawning. He didn't even hear the footsteps behind him. Max jumped, hitting his shoulder, pushing him to the ground, before the man could scream. Keanu clamped a hand over his mouth and whispered. Not a sound. The man nodded in fear. Keanu tied him and dragged him into the shadows. To down. One left. Ghost leaned against the car, talking on a secure phone. I told you. He won't come after me, Ghost said with a smirk. He's an actor. He's weak. Max stepped forward into the open. Ghost's smirk vanished. The cigarette dropped from his lips. What the? Before he could move, Max leapt. He didn't attack to harm. He pinned Ghost to the ground, teeth near his neck, growling, controlled. Deadly. Keanu walked out of the darkness. His eyes calm, his voice low. He's not just a dog. He's a witness. Ghost struggled, shaking. You don't know what you're doing. You're ruining something bigger than both of us. Keanu knelt beside him. You murdered a cop, trafficked people, destroyed lives, and now you sent men to silence the only one left who saw you. Ghost hissed, no one will believe a dog. Keanu held up a small camera, red light blinking. They'll believe the confession you just gave, he said, and the GPS tracker hidden in your SUV. The one I placed before you even saw us. Ghost's face turned white. Sirens wailed in the distance. Keanu looked at Max. You did it. Max stepped off Ghost, still growling, but controlled. A moment later, police cars swarmed the airfield. The nightmare was over. Hours later, at a quiet gas station on the edge of the highway, Keanu poured a bowl of water for Max. The dog drank slowly, tail gently wagging. Keanu leaned back on the bench and looked up at the stars. Jared would be proud of you, he whispered. Max sat beside him, calm and at peace for the first time in years. As dawn broke, the news spread everywhere. Famous actor helps bring down hidden trafficking ring with help of rescued police dog. Dog once thought broken leads police to major criminal figure. Keanu didn't speak to the press. He just drove. And Max rode with him. Not as a pet, not even as a hero, but as a partner. And together, they returned home, knowing the past had finally been set free. Or so they thought, because a week later, a small package arrived at Keanu's doorstep. No return address. Inside, a collar, not Max's, but someone else's, and a note that read, you saved one. How many more are out there? Keanu looked at Max. The mission wasn't over. The others, like Max's house, was quiet when Keanu Reeves held the collar in his hands. Max sat at his feet, staring up, ears stiff, sensing that something had changed. The note on the table was short but powerful. You saved one. How many more are out there? Keanu turned the collar over carefully. There was no name tag, but there was a number stitched into the inside edge, faded and frayed. 78-K9-NV. Max growled softly, not from anger, but recognition. Keanu looked down. You know that number, don't you? Max gave a short bark, sharp, sure. This wasn't just another dog. This was someone Max had trained with. Someone he had been separated from. And now, someone who might be in danger. Keanu grabbed his notepad and wrote the number down. He tried, searching online databases, rescue logs, even old police records. But the number didn't show up anywhere. It was like the dog had been erased. Silent hold. Again. His hands tightened. They didn't just bury you, he said to Max. They buried all of you. And somewhere out there, dogs like Max, loyal, trained, forgotten, were still being hidden. But why? And more importantly, by who? Keanu reached out to Rachel at the shelter again. She met him that evening in a parking lot under the glow of a broken street lamp. She handed him a USB drive and looked around nervously. I shouldn't be giving this to you, she said. But if this collar came from the same program Max was in, then this might help. The drive was encrypted, filled with files about Operation Sentinel, an old task force program meant to use special dogs in illegal smuggling investigations. The dogs were trained in silence, moved in secrecy, and kept off public records. Until the mission failed, until it all got shut down. Keanu scrolled through until he found a file labeled Unit 782. He clicked. A photo appeared. A lean black lab, intelligent eyes, scar over one eye. Name, Echo. Last known location, abandoned training compound, southern Utah. Keanu turned to Rachel. How long ago? 2 years, she said quietly. They said Echo was too unstable to adopt. They never let anyone near him after the closure. Keanu clenched his jaw. They gave up on him. Rachel nodded. They gave up on all of them. Max sat silently between them, watching Keanu closely. Keanu whispered, then we don't. They left the next morning. Just like before. One man, one dog, and a mission that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with purpose. The ride to southern Utah was long, endless roads, red rocks, distant clouds, but Max never wavered. His eyes were forward, Alert. They reached the compound at dusk. Fenced off. Warning signs everywhere. Old government trucks rusting behind overgrown brush. Keanu parked the bike and crouched low. Max sniffed the air. Then he barked once. Short. Certain. He's here, Keanu whispered. They cut through the fence and stepped inside. The compound was falling apart. Broken doors, shattered windows, everything smelled of dust and memory. Keanu moved slowly, every step careful. Then Max stopped. His tail was up, stiff. They turned the corner into what had once been the main training yard. And there, under the collapsed roof of a kennel run, was a pair of glowing eyes. Black fur, low growl, lips curled back. Echo. Keanu didn't move. Max stepped forward slowly. The two dogs stared at each other for a long moment. Then, without warning, Echo lunged, not at Keanu, but toward Max. But Max didn't fight. He stood still. He let Echo growl, bark, circle him. And slowly, Echo stopped. His tail dropped. His breathing calmed. He sniffed Max once, then twice, and just like that, he remembered. They had known each other. Fought together. Lived together. Lost together. Echo stepped back and sat down. Keanu exhaled. You did it, he whispered to Max. He remembers you. Keanu knelt and slowly extended a piece of jerky. Echo took it gently. For the first time in 2 years, someone had touched him without fear. But before they could move, a voice rang out from above. You were warned. Keanu looked up. A man stood on the balcony of the old control room, holding a radio. He wore black tactical gear. Not police. Private. Behind him stood 2 more guards. Walk away, Reeves, the man said. This isn't your mission. Keanu stood. Slowly. Who are you? The one cleaning up what your dog left behind. He nodded toward Max and Echo. These animals were part of a failed project. They know too much. You think you're saving them, but all you're doing is making noise. Keanu shook his head. No, I'm telling the truth. The man raised the radio. Then this is where your story ends. But before he could press the button, Echo charged. Not wild, not reckless. Tactical. Keanu moved fast. Max followed. The next moments were a blur of motion, dogs moving like shadows. Keanu disarming one of the guards with a smooth takedown. Echo leaping onto the balcony with more strength than anyone expected. And then, silence. The man lay on the floor, breathing. But still. Keanu pulled the radio from his hand and crushed it. Your project failed, he said softly. Because you forgot one thing. The man coughed. What? Keanu looked at Max and Echo. Loyalty can't be trained. It's earned. They left before sunrise. Keanu rode down the canyon road. Echo now sitting beside Max in the sidecar. Heads held high, wind in their fur. They had stopped one piece of a secret program, but they knew now. There were more dogs out there. More forgotten souls. And together, they would find them. Because some missions don't end. They grow. Asterisk. The last door. The wind howled as the bike tore through the canyons. Dawn rising behind them. Keanu Reeves didn't speak. He didn't have to. Beside him, in the sidecar, sat 2 silent warriors, Max and Echo. Both once forgotten, both now found. But this wasn't victory, not yet. They had uncovered a program, Operation Sentinel, that trained dogs for covert missions, then discarded them when the mission failed. They had faced one of the men behind it, stopped him, saved Echo. But the collar, the note, the warning, you saved one. How many more are out there? That question still burned in Keanu's mind. He wasn't going to stop until he found them all. They returned to Los Angeles under cover of darkness. No cameras, no media. Just 3 shadows moving through a quiet city. Keanu parked the bike in a friend's private garage, one he hadn't used in years. Max and Echo followed closely, both alert, both ready. They trusted him now, not just as a handler, but as family. In his old apartment, Keanu opened a hidden drawer under the floorboards and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were documents from his time supporting search and rescue missions overseas, people he had helped, contacts he had trusted, and one name that stood out, Dr. Lena Morales. She had once overseen classified canine programs. Then she disappeared. The folder had her last known location, San Jose, California. Keanu circled the name. One more trip. He whispered to Max and Echo. Just one more door. The next day, they arrived in San Jose. A modest one-story house with overgrown plants, dusty windows, and silence. Keanu knocked. No answer. He waited. Then knocked again. Finally, the door opened a crack. A woman in her 50s peeked out. Tired eyes, long gray braid. "Go away," she said. "Dr. Morales?" Keanu asked gently. Her eyes narrowed. "Who's asking?" He knelt down slowly and said, "They were part of your program." Max and Echo stepped forward into view. Her face changed. She opened the door fully, her hands trembling. "You found them?" Keanu nodded. "I found two. But there are more, aren't there?" She stepped back, letting them in. The house was filled with old papers, maps, and photos, all of dogs, all labeled with numbers and red stamps, decommissioned, unstable, erased. She sat down, holding her head. "They were never supposed to be discarded," she said. "We trained them to protect, to save. But when the funding dried up, they wanted to shut it all down. Said they were dangerous, some of them. We never even processed into shelters. They were just relocated, hidden." "How many?" Keanu asked. She hesitated, then whispered, 13. Keanu looked at Max, then Echo. "We need the list," he said. "Why?" she asked. "They'll come after you." "They already did," he replied. "But this isn't about me. It's about finishing what someone else started. What Jared died for. What Max never forgot." She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. With her help, Keanu compiled a list of all 13. Some were adopted and safe. Some were still missing. One had died, but 3 were listed as last seen with private contractors. Keanu circled those names. "We find them next." Over the next 2 weeks, Keanu, Max, and Echo traveled from town to town, always quiet, always careful. They found another dog, a female shepherd named Maya, tied up behind an illegal training camp in Texas. She was scared, thin, but the moment she saw Max and Echo, she ran into their arms. Then there was Ranger, found in a junkyard in New Mexico, still guarding an old shed like it was his mission. One by one, they found them, and with every reunion, something grew. Not just trust, not just a team, but something bigger. A family. Then came the final name, the one no one could trace. Rex. Last recorded signal, Los Angeles. Then nothing, until one day, Keanu got a message on a hidden phone from an unknown number. "Come to the place where it all began." No address. Just coordinates. Keanu plugged them in. His heart sank. It was the same alley behind the shelter. The place where he first met Max. He returned that night. Rain drizzled lightly as he stood there, breathing in the silence. Max stood beside him, alert. Echo, Maya, and Ranger waited nearby. Then, from the shadows, a tall man stepped out. No weapon. Just a dog. A huge Belgian, Malinois. Scarred, limping, but powerful. Max growled softly. But then stopped. The other dog stepped closer. They knew each other. It was Rex. The last of them. The man holding his leash looked tired, worn down. "He saved my life," he said. "I was meant to silence him, but he saved me instead, and I couldn't do it." Keanu nodded, then let him go. The man looked at Rex, then slowly unhooked the leash. Rex walked forward, straight to Max. They touched noses once, and just like that, it was done. The lost were found, months later. A new shelter opened in the hills outside Los Angeles. It was quiet, private, peaceful, and on the gate was a simple wooden sign, "The Forgotten Are Home." Keanu visited every week. He didn't give interviews. He didn't want credit. But every time he walked through the gates, a group of once lost dogs came running. Strong, proud, not just survivors. Guardians. And as he sat on the grass, surrounded by the ones who were almost erased, Keanu whispered, "You saved me first." Max licked his hand once, then laid his head gently in Keanu's lap. And in that moment, everything was finally whole.